Hello, everyone. Welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. And I'm here to talk about episode 4 of The Acolyte. This episode is titled Day. So I feel like this reinforces my personal opinion that episode 3, which was a flashback episode, should have been the first episode of this series. Because I feel like it would have flowed better with what happens in episodes 1 and 2 flowing into this one. So, you could have a flashback episode with the Coven where we learn about their culture and then have these other 3 episodes after. And I think I personally would have preferred that, but I don't know, maybe other people disagree. But yeah, I thought this was a really interesting episode. Um, I thought it was not quite as good as I mean, and I rate these based on how much I enjoy them. I didn't enjoy it as much as the third episode, but definitely more than the first two. Um, so what's interesting about this show is there's been this whole thing going around of people wondering, oh, who can they put in this show, and this sort of back and forth of like, well, they don't need to put cameos in this. And honestly, sometimes cameos in Star Wars can, depending on the context, can put one out of the universe. It might feel like it's just there and not organic, but the cameo that we do see, people were speculating that the Keldor in this might be Plo Koon, but I was not expecting to see Kiadi Mundi, a young version. He's played by Derek Arnold here, which kind of surprised me because he sounds a lot like Silas Carson. And Derek Arnold apparently is an actor slash puppeteer. He worked on The Force Awakens, so he's been in Star Wars before. So it was very much a surprise, and I'm glad that they didn't lean into the "what about the droid attack on the Wookiees" thing. They very well could have done something super overt with that, given Kelnaka the Wookiee who's on Kofar and whatnot. But the Jedi, Soul says that if he had known that there's this argument back and forth of like, why didn't you tell us that there's a possibility that May could have survived? And he's like, if I had known there was a chance, I would have said. And um, so May and Oja are on different paths, and they go to so the Jedi are heading to the planet. I think this is Kofar, the foresty looking planet, and humorously, Oja says she doesn't want to wear a civilian robe. And then instead of, I really appreciated this edit. They very well could have just cut straight to her in the civilian robe. I think that's what she ends up wearing. But instead, we cut to an outside view of the ship in hyperspace, and then cut to her, like, wearing the civilian outfit. So I thought that was funny, and it probably wouldn't have been as effective if it had been the other way that I just described. But before that, Soul made it seem like he was gonna ask her to be a Jedi again, like in full, but it's really as a consultant here. And this kind of gives me the Ahsoka vibes. At the end of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka, she has walked away from the Order, so she's referred to as a civilian by Mace Windu and such. So I could definitely feel connections there. The otter looking character, whose name is Basil, has this little mini conflict with the droid that Oja has. So it feels very much in the vein of some of that George Lucas humor in the movies. And I appreciate that Oja asked like what Basil's pronouns were. Like, she does refer to him as a he at first, but she also says or they, just in case. I thought that was very considerate. But yeah, Basil is he, as it turns out. An interesting detail in this episode is apparently most Padawans, if they're learning a foreign language, I don't know if this is like part of the course curriculum for the Jedi. But apparently, most Padawans learn Shirawak, and apparently Basil's people's language is a more nuanced language, supposedly. Uh, when we cut to May, one of the lines that she says I thought was interesting was this idea that your final lesson is one you teach yourself. And so her master, or the dark sider who's teaching her all this dark stuff, the xenomorph looking person, um, has basically tasked her on this final lesson to kill a Jedi. But removing that whole context, this idea that your final lesson is one you teach yourself, it kind of reminds me of the sequel trilogy. Luke teaches Rey lesson one and lesson two, and then whatever the third lesson is kind of ambiguous. Maybe the novelizations explain this, but I do quite like the idea that the final lesson is one that you teach yourself. And I don't know, maybe the final lesson isn't known or clear cut, and it's something you discover at the end of your training, and then you know what that lesson is. And on the other end of the spectrum of the Force, it kind of reminded me of the end of the Force Awakens, where Snoke says it's time for Kylo Ren to complete his training, and during the Last Jedi, we're kind of in the dark about what that might be, and behind the scenes there were things that changed, but long term, I guess Kylo killing Snoke was his final lesson toward proving how powerful he is in deception to become a Sith. At least that's how I read it. That's I don't know. That's kind of I don't know if that is the explanation. It's just it's a possibility, but yeah, I don't know. Something about that line. Your final lesson is one you teach yourself. There's something about that really sticks with me and feels like it could connect to other parts of Star Wars. When they are outside of this domicile in which May is hiding, um, whenever I hear the word domicile, I can't help but think of Breaking Bad and that whole thing with Jesse. But yeah, the Jedi surround the place and they sense a presence and turn around, and it's the dark sider who trains May. And on my TV, I couldn't tell at first that it was that dark sider. I actually thought that there was like a black smoke creeping up behind Oja, and it's like, oh, is this a new force power that May learned? But no, it was just the lighting on the TV was so dark. I don't know if it's the TV or Disney Plus or whatever, but no, it turns out to be the Dark Sider. I don't even know if this person who's training May has a name, so I'm just referring to them as a Dark Sider for now. And the Jedi, they I know there's a moment where it's like Oja turns around and sees the dark sider, and it's like, why doesn't she just back away if this is a dangerous person? But he does force push her away, so I guess that little moment could have been done better, so it's a little bit of a knockdown for me. But the Jedi, they ignite their lightsabers and they go into battle against this Darksider, and then it ends. And much like the other episodes of this series so far, the endings have felt too abrupt for me. Um, the way that the show cuts to credits, I guess Ahsoka and Obi-Wan Kenobi may have had a little bit of this vibe, but it feels more noticeable to me here in The Acolyte. It very much feels like it was filmed as a movie and then cut up in places, and so it feels kind of abrupt the way that these episodes end. And yeah, I get it. For this one, they want to end before the full-on Jedi fight against this dark sider because they want to keep people hooked and have them tune in to the next episode. But yeah, I don't know, these abrupt endings have felt really weird to me. So I think by this point, the acting, I said before that in the first couple episodes, the acting felt kind of cold. It felt very much like the Phantom Menace and I guess a bit of Attack of the Clones. But I think I don't know if I'm just getting used to it. The way that the Jedi act. They are very. This is just how the Jedi are. But yeah, I think I'm enjoying this somewhat. It could be better. I'm really curious to see where this goes, how the second half of the series will be, because we are at the halfway point now. And so far, the first half has felt fine overall to me, like on average. So this episode, I would rate today a 7.5 out of 10. So there's definitely room for improvement, more that could excite me, but I'm definitely intrigued to see where this goes. There's that idea of Oja being the one who could bring May back because she's family. And, that's something that we've seen in a lot of Star Wars. I know it's an integral theme of the franchise, but I think it would be interesting if it turns out that May does want to be saved, but Oja refuses to save her. I think that would be an interesting dynamic there. And I don't know if that's how they'll end the show. Probably not. I don't think they'll go there. So, but I don't know. It could surprise me. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. And yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the rest of the series is. I know there are a bunch of people online. I haven't even looked at what people are saying about this episode. I cannot imagine what people are gonna pull out of their ears or whatever to try to grasp onto to as the thing to hate on for this episode. Like, it's felt ridiculous and over the top in some places, like the way that people I can't imagine investing so much time commenting on other people's posts about why they should hate the show instead of enjoying whatever it was that they enjoyed. Like, I don't know, it's just I just can't imagine like being like that. It's just ridiculous. The next video on the channel will probably be a review of the Doctor Who season finale, so definitely curious to see if that sticks the landing. That should be interesting. So thanks for tuning in, and see you all next time.